All right, guys, next thing we're going to be doing is setting up our Nessus Lab. So this is part 4. Part of setting up the Nessus Lab, what you're going to do is you're going to follow the link in the description below, and that should take you to the Nessus site. It will ask you to register for an account, and you can go ahead and register for one. All right, and once you're done registering, it will ask you if you wanted to download Nessus for Windows 10. You can go ahead and download it for Windows if you have Windows, or depending on what operating system you have. I'll be downloading it for Windows 10. And you can just click on the setup Windows installer, and that should get you running. All right, and then once you're done setting it up, you can then type in localhost 8834, and then you should be brought to the Nessus login page there. Once brought into the Nessus login page, you can choose Nessus Essentials, which is the free version. If you choose any of the other versions, they are not free, and they'll most likely just give you a trial version. So after maybe a week, it will expire. Nessus Essentials doesn't expire, so you'll have it as long as you want. Another great thing about it is that if you choose to have multiple Nessus Essentials on multiple computers, you can do so. I was able to do it with my email. I was able to set it up with multiple computers using the same email. Otherwise, if you have an issue, you can always use a different email, right? So instead of using your Gmail, you can use your Yahoo email. All right, and next thing that you're going to do is you're going to get an email from Nessus, and they're going to provide you your activation code. Or during the setup, they'll ask you for your email information so they can provide that for you. So you can go ahead and check your email. You can see here I received a activation code, and I just copied it. And then I entered that in for the Nessus registration. All right, and then after that, it's going to initialize, and this takes a while, guys, so don't turn your computer off. Let it download all of the latest plugins, because that's what's going to take a while, and you should be set. Now, I'm going to show you a video I made showing you the same process, except I'm actually following along with you here. So again, after I registered, I just went to the Nessus site and just downloaded one of these here. So we'll just choose the first one there. So you can see I chose the first one, Nessus. And then it's asking download and install. And I choose to download it. I agree to the terms and conditions, and it will download. I don't think it really matters which one you install, because you will be prompted with that screen, which asks if you want Nessus Essentials. So, but yeah, just go with the one that says Nessus, and then click I accept on user terms and conditions for the setup. And that should be installing. Now, you want to install this on your virtual Windows 10 host, right? So I'm doing this all my virtual Windows 10 hosts. Don't do this on your actual computer, because we're going to be running this scan on our Windows 10 host, okay? That's connected to the domain, right? So we have our Windows 2019 server, and we have a Windows 10 client. We're going to have that set up on the Windows 10 client. All right, and then once the install is done, good. Now, if you want, you can set it up on your own computer as well. However, because we're doing this in a lab environment, we're trying to mimic what you would do in an actual enterprise. That's why I'm asking you to do it on the Windows 10 client. And you can see I clicked advanced, and so I went into localhost colon 8834, and that brought me to this page. Then I choose Nessus Essentials when it asks me what version I want. I could go ahead and enter my information here if I don't have an activation code. Otherwise, I'll just input the activation code I received when I registered. All right, and now it's initializing, and you can see I'm currently logged in now, and it's set up on the Windows 10 client here. They're going to try to talk you into buying Nessus Professional. I would not recommend that. It's very expensive, and you don't need it. You only need essentials for this lab. All right. All right, and next thing we're going to do is we are going to just sign into our Windows 10 machine here. And you can see I've done a little ping there, but I'll open up Edge. And you can see I have the link to get to Nessus Essentials and my sticky note. And I'll just paste that in, and it will bring me to the login dashboard where I'll be logging in. All right, and then once I'm logged in, you can see I'm logged in. And we have connectivity, as we mentioned in the previous video. And then we are able to now click on some of these options here, and I'll just explain them. I do have a Nessus Essential certification, which I had to endure some training for that. But what you have is you have the MyScans. So the MyScans is where you're able to actually, let me go ahead and rewind a little bit. This is where you're able to do new scans. So you can click on Create New Scans. And you'll have another option here as well. So you'll have the all scans. So the all scans where you can view all the scans that you've previously done. You have the trash in case you decide to delete any of your scans. You have policies. This is where, as an enterprise, you can determine what type of policies that you want to enforce or what type of templates you want to use for your organization. So here you can create your own scan template policies, right? Plugin rules. So here you're allowed to create new plugin rules as well. But we're more interested in the My Scan area where we can create a new scan. So from here, we can choose a few scan options. You can choose the basic network scan, the advanced scan, and some of these other options that may be not available for Nessus Essential. You may have to pay for Nessus Professional. Again, outside of an enterprise environment, I would not buy these extra services. But if they're free, then go ahead and play around with them. Definitely. All right, so we choose the basic scan here. All right, so let me go ahead and continue here. So what I mentioned was we just chose the basic network scan there. Although for the target, you're going to need to know the Windows Server IP address, right? So 192.168.1.10, we're going to need to know that because the Windows 10 client is connected to it. So we want to make sure that we input that for the target. So as you see, I input that for the target. The folder is my scans, description, scan done, and then the date. And then the name is what I'm scanning, so the Windows 2019 server. So I'm scanning Windows 2019 server from the Windows 10 client. Do note that this is a non-credentialed scan, so we didn't provide any credentials here in the credentialed field. Non-credentialed scan essentially means you don't provide any login credentials, right? And non-credentialed scans are great, especially if you're trying to see what malicious remote hosts would be seeing. But as for internally, you want to go with the credential scan because it gives you way more information, right? We're going to run that non-credentialed scan. So you can see here what I did was I just clicked on the, you have a stop button there, but it would be green and you'd click on that and then that would run the scan. And then you can see how it's starting the scan. So first is the non-credentialed scan. And we'll just let that run. The non-credentialed scan shouldn't take that long. The credentialed scan will take much longer. So you can see it's finished, and we have 61 informational vulnerabilities that it's detected with one low vulnerability. So obviously this non-credentialed scan didn't provide us too much information, right? And this is why you want to run a credentialed scan if you want to figure out which vulnerabilities exist on your on the target that you're scanning, right? So here I can see that there's this low one for the DHCP server detection, a description of the issue. They provide a solution to fixing it, and then the output that helped them determine why this plugin was applicable to the finding. And you can see that we have a few informational ones down there. Now, if you're trying to triage this, you would obviously pick the low one to look at first, and then the informational ones to look at second, right? And if you had a higher critical one, then that would take priority over the low one. Now, looking here, you have the ability to export it as a .nessus file, which Nessus will be able to import. Also, if you click on the report button up here, it allows you to generate a report as a HTML format or CSV format there, and then it'll provide you some details here. So detailed vulnerability by host, detailed vulnerabilities by plugin, vulnerability operations, right? So this can be useful, and you can export it however way you like. I like to export things as a CSV. That way I can import it into other tools very easily. And I can go ahead and enable all these columns so I get as much data as I can from this export. All right, and you can see it's exported the file here, and I have the data here. Now I'm going to want to make sure I export these and you guys follow along with me, because what we're going to do is we're going to use this data later on in the course, as I'm going to show you how you can make visualization dashboards off of it. Now I'm going to do the same thing. So I chose complete list of vulnerabilities by host, and then I'm going to export the rest of these as well. If you choose to do so, you can. That's up to you. However, I'll just fast forward this video a little bit. That way you don't have to see me continuously trying to just export these reports. Okay, so you can see I've exported all of them here, and they're in my downloads folder. So we'll go ahead and continue on here, and we'll choose new scan. And this time we're going to choose another basic scan. And this one's going to be a credentialed scan. So it's going to be a credentialed Windows 2019 server scan. All right, and then for the description, you can go ahead and enter in the information I'm entering here, which is the scan ran and then the date it was ran on, so I know exactly when that scan took place. All right, and then we're going to enter the target information as well, which, as you remember, is the domain controller, and we're going to enter the IP address of the domain controller. I'm going to fast forward that a little bit, so it's 192.168.1.10. And then you're going to click on credentials here, and you can see for the Windows, click on that, and then for the username, you'll type in administrator, and then for the password, you can just type in your password that you use to log in as the administrator. Should be the same credentials you've been using so far. Of course, this is just for a lab environment, but in the real world, you would not want to do this. You would not want to reuse credentials. You definitely want to change them up and make sure you abide by your policy. All right. And then once you're done with that, you click OK, and then we can start that scan. So now we're starting our scan here. Actually, I'm sorry, that was the non-credentialed scan. You see the credentialed scan right below it, that's the one we want to start. So we can go ahead and start that. You can see it hasn't started yet, so there's nothing under vulnerabilities there. But we just want to make sure that we start that one. Okay. And you can see it's added my credentials here at the very top. It says has my credentials saved there. So now I'm going to my scans here, and I'm going to run that credentialed scan. Now the credentialed scan, it's gonna, when it logs in, what it's gonna do is it's going to essentially connect to that computer, and then Nessus is gonna use its scripting NAS plugins, so to scan the computer for vulnerabilities, its versioning, and many other things like CVEs that might be associated with those vulnerabilities, outdated software, right? And it's going to just comb through the system and provide you information on any vulnerabilities it finds. So here you can see that there's 41 severe critical vulnerabilities. Now you can see the rating here is critical. You can see those are really a dark red. Then there you have high, and that's more like a lighter reddish color. You have medium, which is like an orange, and then you have low, which is a yellow. Then you have informational, which is light blue. Now the informational ones, they're not as critical. They're not a priority. They're definitely something you'll probably take a look at, but you know, from a triage perspective, you may be working cybersecurity. You're only working 9 hours a day, right? So you only have 9 hours to triage the most critical vulnerabilities. So you're trying to go after the dark red ones, the ones that have 41. And we will be patching the system. So we will be remediating a lot of these vulnerabilities that you're seeing right now. And this is what you would be doing in the real world. If you're a cybersecurity analyst or administrator, you would be the one responsible for running these plugins and determining if a system's vulnerable remotely, which is what we're doing right now, and then looking at those results and trying to patch that system, trying to determine what's vulnerable, what's in scope, and just triaging the whole process, right? So we're going to go through that process now. And you can see that there's 25 mediums. Now you're probably asking, well, how can I fix these? Well, Nessus provides some information on how those vulnerabilities can be fixed. We'll take a look at those. A lot of it's just patching in this case. So you'll notice that after we patch this Windows 2019 server, you know, that's all that needs to be done. You can see I could sort by severity, so I could have low or informational, and then I could sort by how critical it is as well. So here we're looking at a critical one here. It looks like a Windows 10 version 1809, which is a very old version. You want to make sure it's up to date. So once we update our Windows 2019 server, this should be fixed. Okay. And you can see that there's a CVE associated with this vulnerability we found here. Again, we will run that update and see if it can be fixed. In some cases, you may not be able to update your server. So you may have to go through the, and by best practices, when I say you will be going through the change management process for when you want to patch a system. You can't just patch it, right? So it has to be approved, right? And then it has to be tested, and then you have to have a plan on how you're going to implement the patch and what you're going to do in the case things go south. And that would probably just be restoring it to its previous condition, right? And after that, you're just going to monitor that and make sure you document that you've actually patched that system. So that's the process in the real world, right? In our lab environment, you could pretend we've gone through that change management board, they approved it, hey, patch system, make sure it's up to date. It's not going to affect any applications on the system, right? And we'll be good to go. All right, and you can see Nessus provides us some information like the CVSS score. So the CVSS score is a score ranging from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. And so if you have a base score of 10, that's very bad. That means that the attack vector can be can be done through like the network, and it's pretty bad. So you can read more up on that on your own. Just look up CVE and CVSS. You want to become very familiar with those two terms because you'll hear them a lot in cybersecurity. And CVE is the common vulnerability and exposure. So that's a identification number given to vulnerabilities, and the CVSS is the scoring of said vulnerability, ranging from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. And you can see it's provided some remediation recommendations, so it tells us to install. And then another interesting about Nessus is they have their own VPR, kind of like their own rating system as well. It's a proprietary rating system that they utilize, similar to CVSS, but done by Nessus, whereas CVSS is done by MITRE. So. All right, and you can see some of the top threats that Nessus is detecting here by their VPR scores. All right, and what we're going to do, and we're going to do the same process we did earlier, which is to export our reports for later, right? I'm going to need these exports later so that I can create my visualization dashboard. So I'm going to export the CSVs for all of the reports that I'm able to actually export for this credentialed scan. All right. And we'll just fast forward through this because it's nothing new, right? You just export all of the CSV reports that you can actually export. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take, the reason for the export is so we can know what our machines were looking like before they were patched and what they were looking like after. So you'll see after, we're going to have a little bit of critical vulnerabilities, and we're definitely going to bring the critical vulnerabilities down. So you can see I can check for updates, and in the real world, you probably wouldn't be able to just check for an update, right? Your systems would be connected to a WSUS or a SCCM, and then they would be pushing the updates to all the clients, right? But in this case, lab environment, we're able to connect to the internet. We're able to grab those updates ourselves, and that's something that we would be doing for both the Windows 10 and the Windows Server host. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go on to my Windows Server, and I'm going to log in, and you can see I've logged in here. And what I'm gonna do is I am just going to go to my settings, and I'm gonna open up my settings so I can check for updates. So you could just type update in the bottom left-hand corner here, and you can see I could check for update. And here, what I'm able to do is, you see all these pending updates, right? So I can actually install these now. Highly recommend you just install them. Because this is a lab environment, what you may see and what I noticed was that some of these updates won't go through the first time, right? So you may have to try it 2 or 3 times for them to go through. In the real world, that's exactly how it's like. They're probably not going to go through on the first time either. Your WSUS isn't perfect. It's going to miss systems, or for some reason they're just not going to take it, and you may have to try running it multiple times, right? So after you finish updating it, you're going to restart the Windows 2019 server, right? That's required for the update here. So we can just give it a second. It's updating. All right, and then once it's finished updating, you can see I've opened up my settings here, and it says some settings are managed by organization. It looks like it's already completed the update. By the way, when I was running those updates, I actually closed out my Windows 10 client because I didn't need it up. And so if you didn't need it up, great. You get to utilize that processing power you would have used for your Windows 10 client, and say you could use that for your Windows 2019 server, which is installing those patches. All right, so you're going to get logged into the Windows 10 client here. All right, and after logging into your Windows 10 client, you're just gonna go ahead and log into your Nessus dashboard again here. So, all right, guys, for this next portion, we're going to go ahead and run the credential scan once more to get that before and after. So we're gonna be able to see what it looks like after we patch it. So I'm gonna click on the credentialed Windows scan. I'm gonna launch it. And for time's sake, we're gonna go ahead and fast forward to what that's gonna look like when it's done. All right, and this is what it looks like when it's done. Look at this, guys. We probably have one or two criticals now, maybe like one or two mediums and highs, and most of them are just informational. So we managed to patch this system and minimize how many vulnerabilities it had. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is export my reports again so that we can create a dashboard to show the before and after. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and fast forward here, but yeah, you can see that we've managed to minimize vulnerabilities. And you can see we still have a few left, and this is where you would have, take time to research how can you mitigate this vulnerability if you're unable to remediate it, or what can you do to fix this vulnerability. All right, and you can notice that we still have a critical one. Again, we may have to adjust some settings, some registry settings, or run some PowerShell commands to get that fixed, right? Or in this case, it says solution, contact your DNS server vendor for a patch. So again, I take it upon you that you go ahead and you research how you can further secure the system and patch it, right? But this should suffice for the report that we're going to generate, because in the real world, you're not going to be able to minimize every vulnerability. In fact, there's some vulnerabilities that you're not going to be able to patch at all. So you're going to have to mitigate them, and you're going to have to research how to mitigate these vulnerabilities. And so that's going to give you some real world experience right there as well. All right, and as you see at the end, I export my reports again, so I get that before and after screenshot. And I went ahead and put them in folders, one for after update, before update, and another for uncredentialed scans. So I organized my reports there. And if you just ran them side by side, you may have to look at the time that it was run, so the date modified to figure out, which ones you had run before the update and after the update. It shouldn't be that hard because these updates took a while, didn't they? All right, guys, well, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. I want to create more content for you. And the next one, I'm going to show you how to create a dashboard. Now, dashboards are really important because when you're talking to your managers, they're going to want numbers. They're going to want a quantitative number that they can look at to say, we've patched X amount of systems and X amount of time. Therefore, having a better security posture, and they're going to want to be able to document that. It's something that you should strive for as well if you want to become a manager at some point or another, making sure that you can measure your progress. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. All right, Danny out. Thank you for watching.